Hansen etute Tier Wheatley Nisigasun Opasqueak Uche. Wow, welcome to APTN National News. With September 30th marking National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, we start tonight with a look at how many of the 94 calls to action have been answered since the Truth and Reconciliation Commission delivered its final report in 2015. Here's Sav Jonza with the details.
This year marks the 10th anniversary of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's final report and its 94 calls to action. The Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement and the stories of thousands of survivors culminated in concrete actions the TRC found would redress the lasting harms of the genocidal institutions and advance reconciliation. But how many of these 94 calls have been answered now, a decade later? Well, some might say not a lot, and even more calls have yet to be heard. Indigenous Watchdog is a nonprofit group dedicated to monitoring and reporting on how reconciliation is advancing in so-called Canada. In a 10-year progress report published earlier this month, they found 40% of the 94 calls are not being responded to. That means 22 calls to action are stalled and 16 have not even started, leaving 42 calls in progress with only 14 of the 94 calls completed since 2015. You might wonder who's responsible for the progress or lack thereof. Those accountable to answering certain calls include a mix of the federal, provincial, territorial, and Indigenous governments, religious organizations, and various other entities and associations. The calls to action, or CTAs, target 22 areas ranging from child welfare to health, language and culture, justice, and much more. Only 9 of these categories have at least one call completed, according to Indigenous Watchdog. Some CTAs of note are number 3, calling for the full implementation of Jordan's Principle, which has been recently stalled due to funding changes within the federal program. Also stalled is number 58, calling for the Pope to apologize to Catholic Church residential school survivors and family. It was only partially met in 2022 when Pope Francis apologized for the church's role in Indian residential schools, which some say fell short. Former chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the late Murray Sinclair, said this in response. It is important to underscore that the church was not just an agent of the state, nor simply a participant in government policy, but was a lead co-author of the darkest chapters in the history of this land. CTAs yet to see any movement include number 6, calling for the repeal of Section 43 of the Criminal Code. This call looks to end corporal punishment against children by parents and teachers. And CTA 55 calling on all levels of government to publish annual reports on progress towards reconciliation. Despite these areas that still need improvement, there are still calls answered and completed, such as CTA 49 calling for all religious denominations and faith groups to repudiate the doctrine of discovery, and CTA 41 calling on the federal government to appoint a public inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. It took 10 years for 14 calls to be answered following the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's release of their final report. If reconciliation efforts continue at this rate, the 94 calls to action won't fully be answered until 2082. Which begs the question, how many residential school survivors will see reconciliation in their lifetime? Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Today, the government of Saskatchewan issued an apology to Île-à-la-Crosse residential school survivors. An agreement in principle was also signed promising restitution for survivors who suffered abuse. Video journalist Rachel May has the details.
And today, on behalf of the province of Saskatchewan, I apologize to you.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe was in Al-lacrosse Monday to apologize to survivors of the residential school there. Along with his apology, Moe announced a $40.2 million agreement in principle based on 4 pillars of concern to provide compensation to survivors.
Those 4 major pillars are that the former students shared a common experience, that there was individual abuse, that the community requires legacy healing, wellness, education, language, culture, and commemoration. And finally, the addressing of the legal fees, the disbursements, and the costs associated with the administration of the entirety of that settlement.
The provincial government and Catholic Church operated the Al-lacrosse residential school from January 1st, 1860 to December 31st, 1976. Mo says he hopes today's apology and agreement will be a stepping stone towards building a better future for generations to come.
Each and all of us. We have a past in Canada. It's not all great, but we need to acknowledge it, and we need to work together on understanding it before we can ever take those first steps forward in rebuilding our communities and making our province and our nation a better place for that next generation and for our kids.
Buckley Belanger is the Member of Parliament for Desnethi, Missinippi, Churchill River, where Al-lacrosse is located. He went to this school after his mother passed away. He thanks survivors for their advocacy to ensure that Al-lacrosse's voice is heard, as the school was not eligible for the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement. Belanger then shared a message on behalf of the Government of Canada.
And that same little guy that was standing at the edge of the rink and sleeping in a really large dorm, he can now say on behalf of the Prime Minister of Canada and the Government of Canada, I am pleased to see the Al-lacrosse residential school file finally completed from the province's perspective.
In March 2025, the Government of Canada signed an agreement in principle with Al-lacrosse survivors to support investments in commemoration, healing, language, and culture. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
September 28 marked 5 years since the death of Joyce Echaquan. The Atikamekw woman from Manawan, Quebec, was denied proper health care. Joyce's principal office held a tribute to Echaquan over the weekend. As Savannah Craig reports, some disagree with the way the Quebec government has responded over the past 5 years.
J'ai juste ouvert 2-3 secondes puis j'étais pas capable.
Senator Michelle Odette remembers her reaction while watching Joyce Echaquan's livestream in 2020. Amidst severe pain, Echaquan livestreamed the racism she experienced from nurses at Joliette Hospital hours before her death.
En attendant qu'on utilise les systèmes.
Odette participated in a conference commemorating 5 years since Echaquan's death.
The framework of this plan is rooted in Joyce's principle,
where panelists address what's changed and not changed when it comes to Indigenous people's equitable access to health care.
The rage that I felt that day or that night and the following days, it's still present, it's still inside of me.
Justice for Joyce! Justice for Joyce! Justice for Joyce!
One of the responses to Echaquan's death is Joyce's principle. It calls for all Indigenous people to have equal access to social and health services without discrimination. Since Echaquan's death on September 28, 2020, some institutions have adopted this principle, including the Quebec College of Physicians. But the government of Quebec has not.
Joyce, c'est notre George Floyd.
Then Quebec Liberal Party critic for Indigenous Affairs Gregory Kelly fought for the adoption of Joyce's principle in Quebec's National Assembly 2 months after Echaquan's death.
And it was rejected, mostly because of 2 words, systemic racism.
Quebec still refuses to acknowledge the existence of systemic racism in the province.
Lorsqu'on parle de racisme systémique, on n'a pas la même vision.
Minister responsible for relations with First Nations and Inuit, Ian Lafreniere, was unable to speak with us in a video interview. But his office told APTN News some people fixate on the term systemic racism, while Quebec believes the root cause must be attacked. In an email, press officer for Lafreniere's office, Maxime Tardif, said, "We have integrated several key elements of Joyce's principle into Bill 32 on the implementation of cultural safety in the healthcare system. We also conducted 2 major awareness campaigns on Indigenous realities in order to better inform and raise awareness among the entire population." For Michelle Odette, Quebec has not done enough.
I hope that we change for a new government that will embrace Joyce's principle And right away after recognizing that there is systemic racism, not only discrimination, but racism.
Quebec is scheduled to go to the polls to choose the next provincial government in October 2026. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Trois-Rivières, Quebec.
A new documentary about systemic inequity is premiering on APTN. We talk to the film directors when we come back. Echaquan. Pitigwe. Youth-led movements against Bills 5 and C5 continue along the Attawapiskat River in northern Ontario. They're taking a stand against the proposed special economic zones in the Ring of Fire. The mineral-rich land is in the traditional territory of the Muskego Cree. Youth and community members have been camping out along the riverside of the proposed zone since August. This weekend, a group of paddlers from the Kingston area in eastern Ontario were joined by some youth from Attawapiskat on the Rideau Canal as a symbol of solidarity in opposition to the provincial and federal bills. Ramon Cataquapit and Tristan Ashishkish are in Kingston for the next few days, sharing their thoughts on what's needed to repeal the bills. Cataquapit is the founder of an Indigenous youth movement called Okinaywak. He says more youth-led movements like the one in Kingston are needed to gain support across Ontario.
We're looking to grow that same kind of initiative and bringing it to different cities and even to First Nations to start off spreading the word, but then we're creating an action plan to where the government can't ignore what we're going to come up with. And that's something that's building and boiling in the pot. And I think that's something that is not only going to advocate for First Nations equity, equality, and environmental stewardship, but for the rights of the people of Canada.
The current Yukon government has given what is likely to be its final update on the Eagle gold mine. That's because a territorial election must be called this week. A heap leach failure in June 2024 at Victoria's Gold's Eagle gold mine in central Yukon caused cyanide to spill into the surrounding environment. The government says it's working to implement all of an independent review board's recommendations to enhance design operations, safety, and improve regulatory oversight. Officials say other work includes management and treatment of water on site, like installing additional groundwater wells and repairing a water storage pond. They also note concentrations of contaminants is declining in groundwater. John Stryker is the Yukon's Minister of Energy, Mines and Resources.
I'm confident that whoever takes on this role next, regardless of political stripe, will need to continue this important work and build on the progress we've already made. We all agree that we need to update our legislation to reflect modern-day treaties, to protect our environment, and to ensure a sustainable, responsible mining sector. The Yukon's future is counting on it.
According to territorial election rules, an election must take place on or before November 3rd of this year. A new documentary set to premiere on APTN takes viewers behind the curtain and into the quarters of systemic inequity, from the Indian Act to residential schools to modern-day family separation, to reveal the true face of a nation. The Good Canadian will debut as part of APTN's special coverage on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The film is co-directed by Lena Minifee and David Paperny. Krishna Jacote spoke with them earlier.
Lena and David, thanks so much for being here. Lena, we'll start with you. The Good Canadian is described as part investigation, part real-life horror story, and part national reckoning. What can viewers expect for this?
That's a great question. I'd say it's one of the first big idea Indigenous films done by a partnership with a settler filmmaker, David, who's a seasoned journalist, and myself, exploring where we're at 10 years after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, as well as where we're at today, when the lives intersect, when non-Indigenous and Indigenous lives intersect, what happens with casualties and fatalities to our people still, and it's still happening today. So that's kind of what we're digging into. And we go through different sectors. We talk about healthcare, education, social work, and the justice system.
Very interesting indeed. David, we'll start with you next. You spent 4 years working on the documentary dealing with harrowing subject matter like child apprehensions. Were there things that you heard or saw that shocked you?
Thank you. Yes, a lot of what I discovered shocked me very, very much. To realize from the first-hand interviews we did with people, often non-Indigenous people working with Indigenous patients and students and in the system, just how awful things are today. The footage we have of a newborn baby being snatched from a hospital despite an order to allow the baby to stay with its mother was just one of many shocking scenes that I was, along with Lena, able to document and put on for this film.
And Lena, as an Indigenous woman, did making the documentary have an impact on you personally?
I mean, I would have not made the documentary or joined this gigantic feat of a 4-year project without it already having an impact in my life. As we know, as Indigenous people, we're affected through systemic oppression and racism our entire lives, which non-Indigenous people, I don't know if they can get their head around this. I think the documentary does the job of that. But, you know, from birth to school to high school, college, and then we give birth. And then if we want to get land or try to get our land back and live like we used to, every single part of our life cycle is interrupted or intersects with different departments and systemic oppression. So it already affected me before I even started this documentary, which is why we made it.
Yeah, definitely a long time coming. And David, the film will premiere on September 30th on APTN and CBC. What are you hoping viewers will take away?
Good question. We tried to show that not only is the genocide happening in Canada now, but that we are all, us non-Indigenous, us settlers, we are all complicit. Even our silence is complicity. And for audiences both on APTN and on CBC to see that, as one of our subjects say, none of us are free until we're all free. And that it's up to all of us to work much harder to ensure that the injustices happening in Canada today don't continue.
David and Lena, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And we tell you about some stories around truth and reconciliation in Alberta and British Columbia when we come back. Plus,
Tansei, I'm Chris Anachkate in Ottawa. I'll be hosting APTN's National News pre-show, co-hosted with Dennis Ward. We'll be joined by special guests ahead of Remembering the Children's Live special. Our coverage begins at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Please join us then.
to WOW, welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Wolf Moor happened upon a family of bears hanging around waiting for their next meal. Thankfully, Wolf was not that meal. Please stay safe when photographing wildlife. Now for the chance to be our next photo of the day, send your pics to share at aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, Charlottetown 18, Halifax 19, Happy Valley Goose Bay 10, Inukjuak 7, Chibougamau 6, Val-d'Or 8, North Bay 17, Sault Ste. Marie 21, Big Trout Lake 10, Kapuskasing 12, Churchill 12, Thompson 16, Barons River 23, Gimli 24, North Battleford 22, Regina 30, Uranium City 16, L'Orange 15. Moving west, high level 14, Fort McMurray 16. Edmonton 23, Lethbridge 24. Bella Coola 10, Campbell River 11. Dease Lake 8, Smithers 9. Up north, Rock River -1, Mayo 7. Norman Wells 3, Fort Simpson 13. Tuktoyaktuk 1, Colville Lake 4. Cambridge Bay 4, Baker Lake 8. Arctic Bay -7, Igloolik 1 degree. Dozens of supporters were wearing orange shirts Monday morning on the Samson Cree Nation an hour south of Edmonton. Elders and youth walked about 4 kilometers to honor the lost children and survivors of residential schools. Created by Samson Community Wellness, the walk allowed people to remember those they lost. The annual event finished with lunch, guest speakers, and songs.
It's an event that we've gotten a lot of support on, and it's to honor all of those that are affected by residential school, the children that have never made it home, and our communities that are forever impacted by colonization.
This is why I walk, and this is why education is. You need to know the culture of Indigenous people in this country, how it's in Turtle Island. It's not just in Canada, it's downstates too. It's coming up. How many of us are missing? It's not something, it didn't happen, and it did happen. Educate the children, educate the newcomers.
The Orange Shirt Society is planning a special event in what they say is another major stepping stone for truth and reconciliation. The event would bring together high school graduates that would be graduating in 2026 because in 2013, when the Orange Shirt Society was founded, those students would have been in kindergarten. The day is meant to commemorate the society and to raise further awareness on what the Orange Shirt movement has meant. They are currently fundraising $1.5 million for the event to take place.
I just invite everyone to come to Vancouver, BC Place, Monday, April 13, 2026. We'll start off the day with ceremony with the flag, the red cloth from the National Center that has the missing children, all of their names on it. We'll have artisans, we'll have, it'll be a career fair, and I'm hoping to bring residential school curriculum together from the province and maybe even other parts of Canada.
And that's your APTN National News for this Monday. Mino Puna Paneo Gisagao. I'm TR Wheatley. I'll be back again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll also have a special pre-show at 2:30 p.m. Eastern with Dennis Ward ahead of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation event in Ottawa. Until then, from all of us at APTN to all of you, Egase Gitam Gagawapa Mitinano.